Welcome to week 6 of the course, our final module together. This week we will be talking all about continuing your role as a facilitator in your setting. So over the past 5 weeks of the course, you will have asked yourself some critical questions regarding the unique aims and the goals of your facilitation. You've conducted a needs assessment into your setting, and you've thought through some of the logistics regarding convening your colleagues and supporting them in developing their dialogic approaches. Facilitation, however, is a continuous role and a continuous cycle. It's not just about facilitating your colleagues through one cycle of their own reflective inquiries, but rather you will have to think about how to create your own cyclical facilitation model and plan. And that's what this module is really about, where you're able to continue that role as a facilitator and ensure that you have points at which you can check into your own practice and reflect on your own practice with yourself, but also with your colleagues, to just really look at the successes that you can build on those and maybe some limitations for you to mitigate in future facilitation and in leading your colleagues through future reflective inquiries. And this will help you make any adjustments where needed. So this module is all about how you can continue effective facilitation after that first trial of working with your colleagues. And your objective this week is to articulate how you will support your colleagues to address aspects that need improvement for them and their practices after they complete their reflective inquiries, but also how you're going to review your facilitation model and the process itself to consider what was learned and what can be improved for future iterations. The reflective cycle that you will be leading your colleagues through is not meant to be done just once, of course, but one inquiry leads to the development of new inquiry questions. So this is why supporting your colleagues to accurately capture and record the learning that they derive from their reflective inquiries is so crucial. And this should be done throughout the inquiry process for them in a sort of reflective diary in whatever way makes the most sense for your colleagues and for your setting. And your colleague can include anything in that reflective diary about their experience in the process, the experience of the students they're working with, strengths that they found, limitations or challenges, things that they might change next time, or perhaps would want to focus on in more depth for a reflective inquiry to come. In addition to this diary, it will also be important to have enough space for reflection at the end of your colleagues' inquiries and to record all final results and to capture those key areas of learning. And so maybe an end of inquiry session where you all get together and you have space for that reflection and you can discuss the learning that came out of the inquiries and also what will come next. So now I will introduce some of the resources again that you will likely have seen in the previous week's modules. But this week you should focus on the latter steps of these resources. And so I thought it worth going through them together again for this week. These are all linked in the read section below, by the way, so you can download them again, but you'll probably have downloaded them in previous weeks. So don't worry if they look familiar, they are. So here's the first one, resource 1. It offers a step-by-step guide for your facilitation. And for this week, you should be completing step 3, but also consider the last steps 4, 5, and 6. And obviously what you see here are the first 3 steps, which we've already discussed in prior weeks. So that is identifying your aims for your facilitation as well as your specific goals and focus. And that will have informed your broad model and plan. Then there's step 4, which suggests that you consider the results of your colleagues' inquiries, as well as the results of your own facilitation model and plan. And this will lead into steps 5 and 6, which is your action plan and review process for what to do next as you continue your role as facilitator and how to refine your plan and model. You would ideally put some actions to work right away in step 5 so that you can review whether or not those are working, but it would be great to have a review session with your colleagues to look at their completed inquiries and their overall experiences and see how you might improve your facilitation model or have them take on a leadership role if you have a dialogue leadership group, for example. And you'll also want to consider, and this is pretty important, the level of scaffolding that you'll start with and how you plan to fade support over time. Think about possible issues that might arise, how to tackle them, but this will likely also depend on your unique organizational structures and the institutional aims within your organization. So something to think about and to plan for right from the beginning. The next resource I'm going to talk about is Facilitator Resource 2, and that was introduced in the week 4 modules, if you remember, or for week 4 module materials. And that offers you some questions to ask yourself when you're at the final stages of supporting your colleagues' inquiries. As it states at the beginning of this resource, this is of course meant as guidance. It is not a rigid structure to follow at all, since all facilitation will look very different depending on the setting and the goals. So for this week, it is important to think through how you're going to support your colleagues for steps 5 and 6 in this resource. So how you will support them in making an action plan for what they should do next, and how you will support them in reviewing and reflecting on the experience that they had when conducting their inquiries. And I would note that when looking at this cycle as a whole, it is entirely feasible for you to have intensive input in certain steps of the reflective cycle, and then very little input in other steps. All of the facilitators from the trial had a very different approach and varying levels of support that they offered to their colleagues. And the important step to focus on in terms of your continued role as a facilitator is the 6th step that you see here, where you have a space to review the process with teachers for specific successes and challenges. So this, in combination with the action plan that your colleagues complete in step 5, that can helpfully really inform your continued role and the collaboration that is happening through your facilitation as well. So you can help inform your role through that space for reflection. The last resource that I will introduce you to today in this video is the most recent one that I've developed, and that is a self-audit or a self-assessment of your practice as a facilitator. So here's a screenshot of some of the initial questions it asks you, but you can download it in full below. And the intention behind this resource is to help you track your growth, your successes, your challenges, and your impact as a facilitator. And it might be also nice because you can fill out the self-audit at the same time that your colleagues are filling out their self-audit of their practice before they engage in any materials regarding educational dialogue. So you can do it as a group. Then you and your colleagues would all fill out your respective self-audits again after you engage in the materials or do maybe one round of a reflective inquiry. And so then you will revisit all of these questions again. Fill out a new version. Don't fill out one where you can see your previous scores, because that might sort of impact the scores that you give yourself afterwards. But so do a blank template, but then you'll be able to sort of analyze the results to really look at what areas were really successful, what areas were easier, and how can you sort of build on those successes, but also what areas were really challenging, what areas did you sort of skip over, and why was that, and how can you mitigate for that in future reflective cycles or in future facilitation plans. And so that analysis might help you sort of refine and inform your future plan as well. That's really it from me for this week's content. Short but sweet. A lot of this week is just going to be you reviewing some of these templates again, looking at those latter steps like I talked about, and finding elements that really work for you and for your setting, and thinking through a plan of action, how to enact that. So if there's anything that you're unsure of, please feel free to reach out anytime to myself or to your course peers as well on the discussion forum. It's a great avenue for questions. And otherwise, I will look forward to seeing your completed work, your completed facilitation plans that you submit at the end of this module. And remember that you do have to submit a completed facilitation plan in order to receive a certificate of completion for the course. And that can be a completed version of the facilitation plan template that I've linked to in the resources section. that you would have seen in week 1 as well. And so you can fill that out, or it can be in another form that makes most sense for you. The important thing is that it's a useful plan for you and that you can actually use it to start to do your facilitation and to also add your notes to as you are facilitating, and maybe even to add the analysis of the self-audit of your practice too as well. So feel free to reach out if that's difficult to complete, or if you're thinking through another sort of learning output to submit in order to receive a certificate of completion. But otherwise, I will very much look forward to reading those and to continuing to be in touch. And because this is the final week of the course, I think I will also note a couple more things. And that's first, if you're taking this course as part of a live running, I just want to let you know that all of the materials are going to stay online and available, accessible to anyone, anywhere to use. So don't worry if you haven't had a chance to review everything in depth, or if there's something that you want to revisit, everything will remain online. And if for whatever reason, maybe you can't find something, or something's been taken off for a future iteration of the course, feel free to just email me anytime, and I will help you find that resource, or maybe something that hasn't been put on the course, but that would be really helpful for you in your facilitation, because I'm sure you wouldn't be alone if that were the case. The other thing I want to mention is, similarly, because all of the course materials will remain online, this course can actually be taken as a self-paced module series. So if, for example, you're watching this video, but you haven't actually been doing the course activities and you want to revisit it, you can plan it as a self-paced module series, even with someone else who's interested in being a facilitator. And you don't have to facilitate alone as well. Do remember that you can be a joint facilitator with another colleague in your setting. So you can always take this course together if that's of interest as a self-paced series. But I do find that those who take it as a live running complete it. It is very difficult to motivate yourself to complete it if it's just self-paced. Also, the last thing to mention is that if you haven't heard of them already, there are more courses that are set to go live in early 2022. So I've included a link in the Do section below to register your interest in those if you are interested. One course is going to focus a little bit more intensively on the theory and the evidence of educational dialogue, a sort of foundations level course to really introduce educators, practitioners to educational dialogue in a way that is intensive enough to get a really good grasp of it. And then there will be another course just for practitioners to conduct their own reflective inquiries. And so if it sounds like either of those courses might be of interest to your colleagues, you could always have them take the course as a group, either during one of our live trials or, again, as a self-paced module series together as a group. And then you can facilitate their participation in that course. Or you can take the materials from it and sort of reproduce them and repurpose them for your own facilitation workshops. But since the course will already be there, I thought I'd pose the idea anyways that you can have your colleagues take it together as a group, and then that can sort of drive their inquiries forward a little bit more in a structured way. But if it doesn't make sense for your setting, then feel free to adapt where needed. So that's it, really. I hope you've gotten a lot from this course. I hope that you feel very well equipped to facilitate your colleagues in developing their dialogic approaches. I really admire you as facilitators. I think that it is through your work and your effort that we will see lasting impact and really positive change in education. So thank you. And I just want to end by saying a really big thank you as well to everyone who participated in the course. I feel so excited by the work that I've seen and the work that I've seen participants put in and produce and take from the course. And I just really hope that this has been a positive experience for you all. I will also just say in the Do section of the weekly materials below, you'll see a link to a post-course survey. This is really helpful for me, this data, to improve the course for future iterations. So I would just really appreciate it if you took the time to fill this out. It will just take a couple minutes. So thank you again for all of the work that you have done, and I really hope that we stay in touch.